Alright, we're going to tie a purple Hippie Stomper on a size 12. It's a dry fly hook. I prefer dry fly hooks over nymph hooks, even though the Hippie Stomper is supposed to be tied on a nymph hook. I like the dry fly hook for the wider hook gap. That way, if you have a light take, it's more chance of a hookup. I've already got the thread started. It's purple uni, 136 denier, because it's a foam fly, so you want a little stiffer thread so it doesn't break. So I've already got the thread started. And go ahead and wrap it around the whole body of the fly just for a base. Doesn't have to be perfect right now. It's all going to get covered up eventually. And for the tail, we use mousse. You want to take, I don't know, 8 to 12 fibers just for floatability. I tie it heavy for western waters so that way it floats well and has good durability. Put those hairs in a stacker. When you pull it out, you can take off all the errant fibers that don't need to be there for the tail. And you don't want the tail too long. Normally on a dry fly, you do it the hook of the shank. You want it just a little bit shorter than shank length for the tail. Pinch wrap, kind of a loose wrap so you can adjust your tail if you need to. And then tie down the fibers towards the front of the hook. Pick those up, snip them off. Tie them down. Come back. And then I use 2mm for the color of one you're doing. This is a purple fly, so I'm using 2mm purple foam with 1mm black foam. I've seen a lot of these tied with 0.5mm black and 1mm color. I don't know if it's because they think it's easier to tie with skinnier foam, but I like the more robust foam. Like I said, it's again for western waters, so I want it to float, and I want it to float well. So you put the color that you want the fly to be on top, because we're going to pull it over, and that will end up being the bottom. And you tie it in, and you want your foam to bend over right about where the tail starts for the mousse. Like I said, this stuff doesn't have to look too pretty because it's all going to be covered up, but I do want it in there tight. I check it to bend a little bit. It needs to go a little further back. No big deal. You just wrap a little further back. Then go ahead and wrap it up. It's one thing you got to watch when you're tying foam, is it likes to spin. You'll see how this all gets covered up with the finished product. So what I do here, I've got it pretty well tied in. It's not completely covered. I can still see purple and black. But just bring it up here, and I just half hitch it a couple times because I'm going to be switching to tinsel. Cut it off to get it out of the way. This is just regular purple tinsel on a spool. I use it on a bobbin instead of wrapping it. It just makes it easier. And you want to take the spin out of your tinsel so it covers better. And here you want to have 100% coverage. Check the bottom. Looks good. I bring it up. Do the same thing, half hitch it off. Go ahead and tie your purple back on. Okay, and then I use super glue here, just another durability thing, also keeps the foam from spinning. You don't want to use too much because super glue will eat the foam. So you just put a little bit across the top of that tinsel that you put down. And then when you pull this foam forward, you don't want to pull it too tight because the foam's got the little holes in it, which is what causes it to hold air and float. So you don't want to pull it over too tight. You want to pull it over to where it just rests on there, and then grab it with your fingers and hold it tight where you're going to wrap it to keep it from spinning. And you can manipulate it with your fingers a little bit to get the desired effect of how you want it to look. And you just tie it in a little bit, because trust me, that will spread out with what we're going to do next. Next, we're going to tie in a little white wing, and we use EP fibers. EP fibers are available in a bazillion different colors, but we use white. And I don't use too much of this because this is what's going to cause the fly to sink, because this stuff will hold water. So when you put your dry fly floating on it, you want to put it on this and the hackle, because if you don't, this will fill up with water and it will sink this foam fly. You want it right on top. Just put one wrap on there so you can adjust it so it's right in the middle of the bag. And pull it down tight and wrap it a couple times to tie it in. Next to the legs, let me trim this out a little bit. A lot of guys tie with gray or white black barred legs on the purple Hippie Stompers. I use a light purple barred with black. It's personal preference. I actually think these work better, but like someone once told me, fish just want to see that it has legs. They really don't necessarily care what color they are. So again, one wrap to adjust the leg where you want it, and it helps to have a rotary vise to do these, so you can put the leg right where you want it. And I'm just trimming it a little bit just so I can get it to a workable length. I know it's wasteful, but that's okay. Legs are cheap. One wrap, and I set my legs right in between the purple or the color foam and the black foam. Is where I like my legs to sit. They seem to ride the best way, best presentation that way, and whatnot. Next thing is the hackle. I use grizzly hackle. Some people use a solid color. I prefer grizzly. Tie this in on the side. Just makes it easier to see where you're going to tie it in on. trim the tag of that hackle. Don't trim your legs. Bring your thread up there to the front. I gotta grab my hackle pliers. And we're gonna wrap this hackle away from us. And it looks big and ugly because you want it to be big and ugly. This represents a terrestrial fly. Bring it around, tie it off. Now this is where you don't want to take too many wraps. 3 wraps is good. Flip off the tag of that. And come around here to the head. Just a few wraps. Now I do not whip finish Hippie Stompers. I don't like fighting with the foam. So I use a 1/2 hitch tool. 1/2 hitch 3 times. Cut your thread. Then I take a clear coat, basically Sally's Hard as Nails, any sort of rapid dry fingernail polish clear coat, and I put it on with a toothpick so you don't get the eye of the fly, so you can get your line through it. We've all been out there on the bank trying to put fly line or leader or tippet, not fly line, leader or tippet into a fly and can't do it because there's head cement in the eye. So then it's going to be hard for the camera to see, but then you want to trim the bottom of the hackle so it's flat, because you want this fly to lie flat on the water. So you trim it so it's flat, like so. Again, it doesn't have to be super perfect. And then you want to trim the legs to be just a little bit longer than the hackle sticks out. That one's already good. And then this wing material on the back, you want the back really short. Got some hair on fibers here. And the front, we got to trim that foam off the front first, and you want it a little bit shorter than how long the body is. Just trim it off straight. Like that. And then this wing here, you want it a little bit longer, about a hook band shank longer than the foam. Trim it. And that there is a purple Hippie Stomper, size 12.